All right, we are live. Welcome into Raw Takes with Andrew Hody, live episode 3. Hope everyone had a great week. Good to be back with you here on another Saturday. We got a ton of news to get to. Make sure to stick around with us here on Raw Takes with Andrew Hody. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Make sure, obviously, we are currently looking at some viewers right now. Hopefully, we get a couple more in the chat. Feel free to put anything in the chat if you'd like. Like, comment, subscribe as always if you like the video. And always make sure to check out some of our other content, some older episodes. We're going to do some shorts, of course, after the Raw Takes edition is over. But we're live all the way for a little bit here. Feel free to contribute in the live chat. Feel free to reach out to me directly on Twitter/X. Feel free to send me a text if you know me personally. We want as much viewer interaction as possible. That's what we're all about here on Raw Takes Live. So feel free to give some comments out as we talk about sports. We got a lot to get to, obviously, with Major League Baseball coming back, the All-Star game. We're going to talk about the NFL first, just kind of get that out of the way. It's still the offseason, not too much to go on there. We'll talk a little bit about some of the news in the NFL, obviously, some big extensions coming this week, too, for players not too far away from Cleveland, in a rival city. Let's just put it that way. The NBA, obviously, Damian Lillard going to the Portland Trail Blazers. Why I'm not surprised by that move and why nobody should be surprised by that move. It's right here for you on Raw Takes Live with Andrew Hody. Let's get to it right away as we start things off with the NFL. Let's go to the Cleveland Browns first things first, just locally here in Cleveland, obviously. Big news earlier this week. I believe actually it was a week ago today when I last did the podcast. It was big news that right after on that day that Quinshon Judkins was arrested for, I believe, what was a domestic dispute. That's going to now go against the Browns. Obviously, public perception here in Cleveland already bad against the Browns. And, the stadium debacle, which I went into a couple episodes ago, already kind of haunting the franchise. And now you have this disaster, per se, overlooking the running back position and what the future of that is. And now that Nick Chubb is with the Houston Texans, what's that going to bring to the Cleveland Browns? Now, obviously, if you're a Cleveland Browns fan like myself, you realize you probably don't have that high of expectations this year. You shouldn't have high expectations this year on paper based on how the roster looks. And now that you don't have who was one of the best running backs in football, and you bring in this rookie, and he's already a mess off the field, that doesn't make you feel very good. I don't feel good about it at all. Obviously, the Browns probably don't feel good about it at this point, but this is going to go back to the organization and character development or character guys. Are these scouts not finding the right character players for this organization? We already had issues last year with Mike Hall Jr. What are they hiding in Columbus that we don't know about? That's another big question. Is Ryan Day not that great of a disciplinarian when it comes to these guys off the field? And there's other issues that have kind of came across that we just don't know about because it's hidden in Columbus. So you could look back at Ohio State. You could look at the Cleveland Browns organization. Clearly, there's going to be fingers to point when it comes to that. Obviously, it really doesn't matter for Ryan Day. He's got a championship program. In terms of the Cleveland Browns, they are nothing special at all. So when you look at the Cleveland Browns, this really looks more bad on them than it does Ohio State in any way. Because at least Ohio State on the college level is a performing college athletic program. So having said that, let's take a look at the Quinshon Judkins debacle that we currently have. The Browns running back position is now supposed to be completely brand new this year. Obviously, Nick Chubb wasn't the Nick Chubb of old last year. He's coming off a serious injury in 2023. Totally get that. But you bring that guy, a fan favorite, you get him out of town. He goes to the Houston Texans. You don't sign him back, and you sign these rookies. And you have Jerome Ford, who I am still in the theory that he is not at all Jerome Ford, a guy that is going to be a plausible situation to have at running back. When you look at Quinshon Judkins, who is supposed to be your good rookie here, coming in from Ohio State, and now he's already probably going to be suspended at some point this year. This is an ugly situation. And so, granted, the Browns as is are already an ugly situation. So to me, this really doesn't do much for me to move the needle. It just states how poor this organization is, as we have 2 viewers joining the live now. I want to give you guys a shout out and a hello. Thank you very much. Feel free to comment if you want to interact or have any thoughts that you personally have. But granted, let's get back to Quinshon Judkins. to me, I don't think the Browns should be indicted too much on this too, because we already expect nothing from them. So there's nothing to expect from the Browns, and already a disastrous offseason move in the draft looks poor based on a guy's character. There's clearly character development issues when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, and character evaluation is clearly not very good either. When you had this last year with Mike Hall Jr., and now you have it with Quinshon Judkins. So to me, this is an indictment on the organization, but I don't want to indict them too much because we don't have high expectations for them. They shouldn't be a very good football team this year. Most people I talk to in town, they say, oh, the Browns, what do we expect them to do this year? 5 wins, maybe less even. Some people think 3-14, just like last year. Hey, I wouldn't be stunned by that. There's talks in town about when Kevin Stefanski is going to get fired. And none of this I really think should be on Kevin Stefanski. But granted, at the same time, given the roster he has, if he doesn't have a roster that wins 7 to 8 games, I would even say. I'd even say 7 games. That, to me, is the threshold for Kevin Stefanski this year. Do a lot with a little, because that's really the situation here. And maybe make Joe Flacco, if he's your starter, ending up this year. And now there's even talks that Kenny Pickett could be the starter, which I think is asinine. I still think that the Browns are only going to end up having 3 quarterbacks on the roster by the time September comes around, and the quarterback that's going to go is Kenny Pickett. So to me, but they did trade for him, so that would be weird too. It's a weird situation. The quarterback situation, to me, I don't even think is really even taking the headlines with this team, and that should be what's taking headlines if it wasn't for this Quinshon Judkins report. So the Browns are a mess. There's no doubt about that. They're going to continue to be a mess. This year is, on paper, looking like it's going to be a disaster. So to me, just take it with a grain of salt. Know that this just happened. Quinshon Judkins probably going to get suspended, and again, look at the organization and say, you're already a mess. We have low expectations for you. We don't expect you to do too much anyway. And a fan favorite, Nick Chubb, is now playing for the Houston Texans. And by the way, Nick Chubb's quarterback now, C.J. Stroud, a former Ohio State Buckeye, who has lit up the league since he got to the NFL. So to me, there's more to root for with the Houston Texans right now, in all honesty, as opposed to the Cleveland Browns. I like Nick Chubb. I like C.J. Stroud. I'm not a huge Stephon Diggs fan, I'll say that. But other than that, Tank Dell, great football player. The Houston Texans, obviously, they essentially robbed the Cleveland Browns of all those picks given us Deshaun Watson at this point. So I kind of like rooting for the Houston Texans from the sidelines over the Cleveland Browns, because the Houston Texans clearly have won the trade now. They're clearly in prime position to be competing in the AFC, and that's a loaded roster. And you're giving them Nick Chubb, and if Nick Chubb is just 50% of what he used to be, that's still a pretty damn good NFL running back. So the Houston Texans right now are just mooching off the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Browns are going to be paying for it yet another season from what it looks like. On paper, you never know. The Browns could win 12 games this year and surprise us all. That's not going to happen. But granted, it could. I mean, it could. You just never know. I don't think we should give the Browns a time of day when it comes to that. The Pittsburgh Steelers extending T.J. Watt. A lot of talk about that here in Cleveland, too. That's the right move for Pittsburgh. T.J. Watt's a great defensive player. Is he as good as Myles Garrett? Clearly not. He can get more sacks than Myles, but as an athletic, gifted player, he's not Myles Garrett by any means. But it's still a good move for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. That's a loaded defense as is. They have Aaron Rodgers on the offense. And given the threshold we have for the Steelers, they're going to win 9 games. It's just a matter of how they do in the playoffs at this point. We know that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to find a way to be above 500. So this addition, well, not really addition, but this extension, I should say, is definitely already going to be good for Pittsburgh. Nevertheless, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, what happens with the TJ Watt extension, because we already know TJ Watt's a good player. We know Pittsburgh's a good organization. It's probably going to end up panning out well for them. The other talk about the AFC North in particular is between Cincinnati and Baltimore. Both of their defenses look pretty weak. There's been talks here in Cleveland that Baltimore should be the favorite to win the division. Personally, on paper, I like Cincinnati's offense a little bit better. The defense, I think, is a little bit more stable in Baltimore, and I think Baltimore, even though their defense isn't very good, but they're obviously John Harbaugh probably being a much better coach than Zach Taylor, I think, plays a role in that as well. But to me, I think the better quarterback is Joe Burrow. I think Lamar's very athletically talented and very good too, don't get me wrong. But granted, I still think with Joe Burrow having all the weapons at his disposal, how the offense came alive at the end of the season to make a playoff push, didn't end up making the playoffs. To me, I feel like Cincinnati is going to be right back in the thick of things in the AFC. Baltimore's still going to be really good too, and that's going to probably be the race in the division. Pittsburgh has an opportunity to make things interesting. I mean, with Aaron Rodgers, if Aaron Rodgers is just how he is when he was with the New York Jets, then I still think based on Pittsburgh's culture, they should be in good shape. Arthur Smith, I still think, is a really good offensive coordinator and can put up a good game plan for the Steelers. So the AFC North is going to be interesting this year outside of the Browns. And I'm saying that as a Clevelander. The Browns, to me, there's nothing going right there right now. The other three organizations, you could argue everything's going right to a degree. Still some defensive question marks for Cincinnati and Baltimore. Maybe some coaching question marks for Cincinnati. I still have them. I think the Bengals have them too. Not the organization, because we know the organization tends to be patient. I mean, look what they did with Marvin Lewis. But granted, I think overall Cincinnati has a lot more cachet, seeing that Joe Burrow's their quarterback and they have great offensive weapons. Baltimore, we know they have the culture. Baltimore's won the division back-to-back. There's no concerns, I think, for the Baltimore Ravens' ability to compete. The defensive construction is still questionable. And then you look at Pittsburgh. We know they're a good organization. Their defense, probably the best of those three teams. The question marks are solely on offense at this point. And if Aaron Rodgers is going to be the Aaron Rodgers that we saw with the New York Jets, or if he's going to be the one we saw with the Green Bay Packers. And going back to like the 2021-22 season for Aaron Rodgers was still good those 2 years. So if you get that Aaron Rodgers, the Pittsburgh Steelers could make some noise. I don't know if they will because of their recent history. I think mediocrity and just one playoff appearance has kind of been the standard there the last few years. Will they exceed that standard? I think the fan base clearly wants it. Obviously, I think the NFL wants it, seeing the Steelers are one of those glamour franchises, but still, that is going to be the big question mark with the Steelers. And then obviously with the Browns, there's nothing. So that's the AFC North as a whole. You look at the rest of the NFL right now. Training camp's still a little bit of ways away, I think, outside of the TJ Watt news, and obviously here locally with Quinshon Judkins. Not too much else to say until training camp comes around and we see these guys in action. But you truthfully never really know until the season begins. It's going to be September when we really get all the answers right in front of us. But I'll say this, back to the Browns for a second. Quinshon Judkins and the headlines there have really driven the team lately. And I feel like the quarterback conversation has kind of just fizzled out. And to me, I mean, I don't know what to make of it because the team's a mess to begin with. There's so many flaws. There's so many problems. And it's giving nothing but grief to the city of Cleveland. That's really just the truth of it now in the Cleveland, Northeast Ohio area. It's just tough to take. It's tough to take all the news we get from that organization in Berea because it's a Cleveland clown show. All right, let's move on to the NBA. Some big news this week with Damian Lillard returning to the Portland Trail Blazers. I'm not surprised by this move, as I mentioned earlier. I don't think anybody should be surprised by this move. Damian Lillard made it clear before he even went to Milwaukee he never wanted to leave Portland. And now the Portland Trail Blazers, they're a much better team than they were a few years ago. Now, granted, Damian Lillard is going to be out this year. So I think the Portland Trail Blazers are going to be on the border of the playoffs, probably a play-in team. So to me, when they get Damian Lillard back, he is on the wrong side of 30. He probably won't be the same Damian Lillard he was in his prime. But you add that mix with the roster that Portland currently has. You add the mix of Damian Lillard and obviously what they're doing and how they've developed into a solid roster. They're on their way to being a playoff team. They weren't great this year, but they were on their way. And I think a lot of people in the NBA took notice of that. But you just added Damian Lillard back. So I think, to me, Damian Lillard's veteran presence is going to be able enough to help the youth that's on the Portland Trail Blazers. They got a really, really good players right now in Portland. And Damian Lillard already has family there. He has roots with the Trail Blazers, and he never wanted to leave to begin with. So Damian Lillard's loyalty to Portland obviously shows with this move. I think you could argue he's the most loyal player in the NBA. Even though he went to Milwaukee, I don't think anybody except Milwaukee fans were really all in on that move. I mean, at first it looked like it was going to be really good, but I think it was clear and obvious that Damian Lillard wasn't the guy that he was in Portland. He clearly was unhappy there. I think he wanted to be in Portland to begin with. So the Milwaukee detour is going to be like a really interesting thing about his career that we are going to probably look back on and say, wow, that was a really interesting thing that took place with Damian Lillard. He never wanted to leave Portland to begin with. He was willing to stay through the rebuild. And then Portland ended up rebuilding those years without Damian Lillard, and now they have him back. And Who knows what takes place in the Portland Trailblazer franchise history now that Damian Lillard is back with the Blazers. But to me, I think Lillard going back, obviously not this season, seeing he's going to be out the entire year. But in 2026, 2027, I'd watch out for the Portland Trailblazers. His veteran presence is going to be huge, especially if the Trailblazers end up being a play-in team this year, which I think is very possible. They might not be. I think they're going to be on the border, and the West is stacked. I mean, obviously you have the Rockets to worry about with what they did. Oklahoma City's not going anywhere. Denver still has Jokic. The Lakers, even though I still don't think they're a great mix of talent right there right now, but still the Lakers are going to probably make somewhat of noise. The Clippers, they got Bradley Beal, and I even posted this on social media. The Clippers getting Bradley Beal puts the stamp on that organization as a retirement home yet again. You're getting an aging superstar to match up with other aging superstars. You have James Harden, you have Kawhi Leonard. Both are on the wrong side of 30. Bradley Beal, obviously, up there too. So why? That makes no sense to me. You're getting aging superstars. They get Brook Lopez, and Brook Lopez is a good basketball player, and he can be a good role play for you. But Brook Lopez is also on the wrong side of 30. Like, this is the retirement home of the NBA. These are aging superstars in an aging, glorified Hollywood. And, you know, you talk about the Lakers in town. Obviously, it's the Lake Show. We know what they are. The Clippers, they should honestly be the better team right now. On paper, they look like they are. But the youth is with the Lakers and the role-playing guys they have. And obviously now they have Doncic and LeBron, obviously an aging superstar. But Doncic probably going to take over when LeBron retires, whenever that may be. The Lakers, to me, have more going for them and the cachet of already being the king of LA. So if you're the Clippers right now, why are you getting all these old players? Bradley Beal is old. And is he a good basketball player? He is a good basketball player. I'm not taking that away. Kawhi's a good basketball player when healthy. James Harden's a good basketball player. I mean, they're good basketball players, but they're on the wrong side of 30. Ty Lue, I think, is a great coach. I'm glad that the Clippers have kind of stuck it out with him. They haven't really fired him because none of this is really his fault. And I'm amazed Ty Lue hasn't taken the fall yet. And, you know, as a Cavs fan, I still really appreciate Ty Lue for what he did for the city of Cleveland, winning the championship. But, you know, I respect the Clippers as an organization for keeping Ty Lue, but they need to find youth. The more and more they get these older players, the more and more this team is just going to be a first-round appearance, and that's it. They're going to lose to the Nuggets in 7 games, or they're going to lose to the Thunder in 6, or something like that. That's how this team is constructed right now. They don't have youth. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they have nothing but youth. All those guys are on the other side of 30, the right side of 30, not the wrong side of 30. And the Thunder won a championship with probably the youngest roster in the NBA. So good luck competing with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who aren't a super team, by the way. On paper, the LA Clippers would be a super team in 2019. In 2019, if this was the LA Clipper team of that year, then we'd say they would have been competing with the Golden State Warriors because they had Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Bradley Beal. Go on and on, even if Paul George was still there. By the way, them getting Paul George was an opportunity for them to develop Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And they gave Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to the Thunder. And there is no questions now that the Thunder won the championship this year, that Oklahoma City in the long run won that deal. And Oklahoma City just locked in SGA for years to come. They have Chet Holmgren, who I think is going to be a superstar within the next 2 years. So the LA Clippers are a retirement home franchise with nothing but aging basketball players. I don't want to say it's a disgrace to their fans because they're putting out good product, but it's not great product. And if you want to put out great product, you got to do what the Oklahoma City Thunder are doing. You got to build with the youth. You got to do what the Indiana Pacers are doing. The Indiana Pacers, moving off of Miles Turner is a question mark to me because he's had that veteran presence. But they have a relatively young roster, great offensive talent. They had veteran players this year like Siakam and Miles Turner. A great head coach in Rick Carlisle. And obviously Ty Lue is a champion, a respectable head coach as well. But Rick Carlisle, same thing. What the Indiana Pacers are doing with some youth, some good veteran mix, that team got you to the finals and maybe in the future could win it if they have a couple more additions this year. I like Indiana and the culture they have right now, and I think they're in an upward trajectory. So to me, you got to look at the teams like Oklahoma City and Indiana and the mixes they have and how they got to the finals. I'll even throw in the Cavs. The Cavs, they're still getting out of the second round, but the Cavs have a good young core of talent. I mean, the Cavs went farther than the LA Clippers did the last couple seasons. The LA Clippers are just in the playoffs and then gone. That's how they are right now. They're not a franchise that I think is really taking winning a final seriously. Because if they want to take it seriously, which they claim they have been, and they have a first-class owner in Steve Ballmer, they have a good organization, they have Ty Lue, the head coach, and even when they had Doc Rivers before they fired him, they were a first-class organization. With all due respect to the Clippers, I want to give them their dues. They still are titleless in LA. The Lakers are always going to be number one, and you keep putting out this retirement home crap. You need to get youth on that roster. That's the bottom line. If the LA Clippers are even considering competing for an NBA Finals, they need youth on that roster. They can keep Kawhi, they can keep James Harden, they can keep Bradley Beal and all these guys, but if you're going to just add another aging superstar to a roster filled with aging superstars, that's not going to be a good mix if you're the LA Clippers, and I'm going to stand by it, and we're going to see another first-round exit next year if this is the strategy the Clippers have. I even like the trajectory the Suns are in even better. But with no more Kevin Durant, who I think is already a problem in the locker room, I think he could help out the Houston Rockets. It'll be a different situation there. But the Suns with Devin Booker, now they have a guy like Jalen Green who's a little bit younger, and I think could help bring some more energy. I like the trajectory the Suns are even in right now. Are they as good as the Rockets? I don't think so. But the Suns, to me, that they could be a much better team than people expect them to be, especially with Booker locked in on that roster offensively. He's not a good defensive player, but I really like what we saw from Jalen Green and what he did for the Houston Rockets this year. And now that he's with the Phoenix Suns, that could be a good young piece to have and player to play a role with. And the Suns' future could be really bright. I would like the Suns' youth in the mix they currently have to possibly even go further than the Clippers would in the next 5 years. I don't want to say right away because the Suns obviously still have a lot of work to do. Kevin Durant can be a toxic mix with a lot of players, and it could backfire on the Rockets. I think the Rockets have the right man at head coach and Ime Udoka to kind of figure that out, but still, that's another thing I think when you look at the Suns and what they did this offseason as opposed to what the Clippers are doing. Suns, to me, had a better offseason even than the Clippers did. Bradley Beal, aging superstar, not going to help you too much. And an NBA that's continuing to go more towards the youthful direction. Now, having said that, veteran players are huge. Oklahoma City now has those veterans, but they were a young roster that honestly probably was a little bit ahead of schedule on winning a title. Sure, they were the best team in basketball all year and certainly proved it in the NBA playoffs. But granted, I think they were a little ahead of schedule, but that's going to be the blueprint now. All you really need is one superstar player and a roster collectively filled with really, really good guys. Oklahoma City could be a super team in the future based on that, to be honest with you. I don't even want to say the term super team anymore because it feels outdated. But when you look at all these rosters, I mean, you have like core fours on the Cavs. You have your core group of guys on the Denver Nuggets, like the best starting five in basketball in 2023. And that's why the Nuggets won it all. You look at the Indiana Pacers. I mean, Halliburton, clutch, but is he really a superstar? He's had great clutch moments, but I don't see the consistency from him to consider him a superstar. And he's already going to be out for a while. And that probably will hurt Indiana next year. But still, I like Indiana's future when Halliburton gets back too. So Indiana's construction of their roster is kind of a prime example of getting to a finals without being a, per se, super team. You look at the Cavs, same thing. The Cavs still have a lot of work to do. But, you know, the thing is when we're looking at the Cavs right now, we're looking at not necessarily adding another superstar, even though I think that would help, but we're looking at adding good role players. I mean, we lost Ty Jerome this offseason, but he didn't really produce in the NBA playoffs. He did all regular season. We need guys that can produce consistently in the postseason. Look at what TJ McConnell brought to the Indiana Pacers. He was a huge contributor. Look what Obi Toppin brought to the Indiana Pacers. Guys like Ty Jerome didn't do that. So that's what the Cavs are kind of looking for. We're looking for better role players. And that's, I think, where we are in the NBA, which I think is good for the NBA to not have all these superstar teams. We really have question marks about who's going to go to the finals now as opposed to like the same 8 teams we knew would be competing for it. Like we thought all season long it was going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals the entire season. And what ended up happening? It was the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers, and nobody would have guessed it. And the Knicks were completely obliterated by the Celtics and the Cavs in the regular season. Didn't win a single game against either one of them. But Indiana ended up being much more physical than both the Cavs and Boston. And the Knicks ended up being much better coached, to be honest with you, than the Boston Celtics were. I think coaching was a big reason why the Knicks advanced. And granted, the Knicks were stupid for firing Tom Thibodeau. They brought in Mike Brown, who I think is a great head coach and will do some good work for the New York Knicks. But granted, still stupid move. And obviously it was stupid that the Kings fired Mike Brown to begin with, too. So the NBA is filled with stupid executive decisions. They do it all the time when they fire coaches for no reason. But we can talk about that on another show. The element of surprise is actually bigger in the NBA than I think it used to be. There's teams we have to take more seriously now. Like, we thought the Memphis Grizzlies, I think, throughout the regular season were going to be one of the top 4 seeds in the NBA. They ended up being on the verge of a play-in appearance. So, well, they were in the play-in, but they ended up being out of the play-in, close to it. And they weren't. And they had a coach firing as well. That was pretty dumb. But the Memphis Grizzlies now, like they might have gotten better this regular season with Ty Jerome, so that kind of collapse wouldn't happen for them again. But the Memphis Grizzlies, too, like they looked like a team that was going to be one of the top 4 teams in the Western Conference. They ended up falling apart by the end of the season, got swept out of Oklahoma City to end their season. So there is still a lot of question. Like the Memphis Grizzlies could be a championship contender next year. Is the San Antonio Spurs going to be a contender now that Wembanyama is going to be getting back to full health and going to be able to lift that team above his shoulders? Because we already see Victor Wembanyama's got great potential. The Houston Rockets, now are they going to be real contenders? Oklahoma City, we know they are. Can they do it again? The Denver Nuggets, are they going to find the pieces in place to compete with all these other teams in the Western Conference, which is loaded? And even in the Eastern Conference, there's still some good question marks. Like the Miami Heat have great culture, but do they have the star talent anymore? Because they got swept and obliterated by the Cavs in the playoffs. No, they're still a great organization. The Atlanta Hawks, they've kind of made some quietly good offseason moves with Trae Young being a superstar player. Could the Hawks take a step in the right direction this year? I would think the Hawks could. I'd watch on the Hawks. I don't think they're going to be a finals contender, but they're going to be in the mix, I think, this year. The Boston Celtics, they just lost Porzingis. The culture is going to slightly go downhill a little bit. They still have their core 2 guys in Brown and Tatum, but like what else is there in Boston right now? So, and they have good role players. I mean, when you think of Derek White and Peyton Pritchard and guys like that, but still, like the Boston Celtics aren't going to be the Boston Celtics of 2 years ago. So, or a season ago, I should say. So there is a lot to get to in the NBA that we're going to see not just play out this offseason, but as the regular season begins in October. I'm excited for it. The Damian Lillard move, I think, is great for 2026-27. You look at the Bradley Beal move, it looks like, again, another dumb move by the Clippers to keep the veteran talent only being on the roster on the wrong side of 30, the retirement home of the NBA, as I like to say. But still, there's some big question marks going into this season that I don't think any of us are sure of yet. And for the NBA, that's terrific. I think if you're the NBA right now, you absolutely would love a more even field. I think Adam Silver even came on and said that. Like, we would love a more even field. Obviously, 2 small markets making the finals. That's kind of a big deal. Obviously, maybe the American viewer didn't tune into it as much, but Oklahoma City, Indiana, all for it. Small markets, give them some more attention. When do we hear about Indianapolis and Oklahoma City on a regular basis, to be quite honest with you? So we'll see what takes place as the offseason progresses. And I think the next regular season in the NBA is going to be really, really telling. Now, still there's issues with some of the product in the regular season. The regular season, a lot of folks' minds, including mine, doesn't really matter. But we're going to see the course play out. When the playoffs get going next year, we're going to really see where these offseason moves benefit each team. I think it's going to be really interesting when we get to the 2025-26 NBA season. Let's move on and talk about some Major League Baseball. All-Star break now over. We have baseball back in action in full swing. Guardians even yesterday. Jonathan Rodriguez with a big game. David Fry with a big game. Jose Ramirez with a big game. An easy part of the schedule. And the Guardians had a terrible 0-10 stretch, but they've been rattling off wins left and right, including a sweep of the Houston Astros, which they desperately needed, taking 3 of 4 from the Chicago White Sox, taking care of business against the Athletics yesterday, 8-6. Slade Ciccone looks like an ace. I think we can just say that off the rip. Those 6 runs came later in the game for the Athletics, and that's where the bullpen issues kind of come in to the situation. But Slade Ciccone has been doing a great job for the Guardians. Tanner Bibby's honestly been their worst starting pitcher. I'd even argue he's been worse than Luis Ortiz, which we're finding out there's more going under the investigation with him and the betting on pitches. We'll find out more information once we do. But obviously, Luis Ortiz not pitching right now, and if he's been betting on pitches, I mean, obviously we don't want to speculate or assume anything right now as it's still under investigation, but probably for the best as the league gets to the bottom of it. But Slade Ciccone has been the ace of this rotation. I think he deserves a lot of props. Bybee has been a disaster overall. I mean, Bybee kind of got lucky in his last start the other day with the White Sox, but granted, he was giving up too much of the big ball, and he was letting the White Sox even take advantage of that. So the White Sox are a better team than they were last year by far. But granted, still, that's a concerning thing. If you look at the Guardians' schedule, though, they have the Athletics right now. Baltimore Orioles, they could have a good game every once in a while. I'm not necessarily going to say that it's going to be an easy series for the Guardians. We struggled with them earlier this year. But granted, if you can take advantage of the Baltimore Orioles after you take care of business with the A's, I think you're in good shape there. And looking at the American League wildcard field, I mean, the Tampa Bay Rays are just outside of the wild card right now, but it's wide open. It's wide freaking open. So the Guardians, even though they're in 11th place, I think, in the American League right now overall, they could honestly get back into the conversation really, really quickly if they rattle off some wins here. The Tampa Bay Rays got hot at a time. I still think they're a good, well-run organization. They're still above 500. There's a lot of work to do there, and they've been kind of a mess as of late. And they're playing in the AAA ballpark, which maybe is causing some fatigue at this point. But, I mean, the Athletics are dealing with it. Just look at them. I mean, they're not even – they're the Athletics without a city. They're not the Oakland Athletics. They're not the Sacramento Athletics. They're just the Athletics. So, granted, look at the situation there. And the Athletics are a mess anyway. But, you know, it is what it is, granted. But the Rays – They got hot at a time. They've kind of fallen back a little bit. The Yankees didn't look very good yesterday. They still have good offensive production, but the pitching is really, really streaky there. The Yankees, I think, are still going to be a wild card team at the end of the day, but they're going to be on the bubble right now, too. If you look at the rest of the AL Central even, Minnesota's a mess. We're a mess here in Cleveland for the most part until we get above 500 if we start to slowly figure things out. And Kansas City's been a mess, and we play Kansas City coming up too, along with Colorado. So those could be big series for the Guardians if they're able to rattle off some good wins here and get back into the wild card conversation. That would be nice. But catching up to Detroit, I think, is going to be a long haul at this point. The Detroit Tigers, to me, are for real. They're well managed. They have a great rotation. They have some weak offensive players for the most part, but when guys like Kerry Carpenter get going or Spencer Torkelson, they absolutely can hit the ball out of the park. Tarek Skubal headlining that rotation, obviously being the Cy Young winner that he is, brings some good presence to the clubhouse. And obviously the Detroit Tigers are in prime position right now to just win the AL Central. I think it's not even close. They're going to win the AL Central at this point. The Guardians, the mission is going to be get back into the wild card conversation. And in the AL right now, the wide open field that it is, you can. You could be an 11th place team right now and find your way back into the top three of the wild card. I could absolutely see it happen. Will it happen? Still a question mark. But granted, I think it could. And I don't think Stephen Vogt has been as big of a problem with the Guardians as people have made him out to be. Obviously, he's not A.J. Hinch. I just want to say that off the rip. A.J. Hinch right now is clearly the best manager in the division. If he ends up winning some big ball games this year, a big playoff series, wouldn't be surprised at all because that's the direction the Detroit Tigers have been heading in. Granted, obviously, we know what he did with the Houston Astros, which makes him hard to root for, and he still is hard to root for, but granted, that's the case. Still, when you look at the Guardians, so to me, Vogt really hasn't been the problem with an organization that's still not willing to spend like they should. They don't spend the money that they should be spending, and that has cost them. That's not on Stephen Vogt. That's not on Chris Antonetti. That's on the Dolans. If the Guardians can turn this season around, get themselves back in the wild card conversation, and we have a September to remember and that kind of thing, then that's not on Stephen Vogt and Chris Antonetti. I mean, that is on Stephen Vogt and Chris Antonetti. That would be on them because they've done such a good job already last year. Obviously, we know Antonetti has done a good job from the past when he had Terry Francona at his disposal. So to me, if you're the Guardians right now, rattle off some wins during this stretch. You have the Athletics, you have Kansas City, you have Baltimore, you have Colorado coming up on your schedule. You're going to win some games during this stretch. You're probably going to drop one or two here and there. You lost 10 straight not too long ago. And you're starting to figure out who's good and who's bad on this roster. If you get yourself back in the conversation, maybe you aren't selling players on the team. But if you get to a point where you do drop 2 to Baltimore or end up losing the series with the Athletics tonight or tomorrow, then you might have to become a seller, because this is the stretch where you have everything at your disposal to turn it around. And as I said, I don't believe Stephen Vogt is the problem. Definitely Chris Antonetti is not the problem. It's the organization, how it's ran at the top from the Dolan family that don't spend money. And because of it, the organization has made a lot out of nothing over the last few years. So that's that. But you could turn it around right here with this schedule. Get the best of this poor pitching that a lot of these teams are going to throw at you. Have guys like, who I think your new ace, Slade Ciccone, perform really well. Have guys like Gavin Williams get to the top of their game. Gavin Williams went toe-to-toe with Skubal not too long ago. So I think Gavin Williams deserves a lot of props right now. And I still believe he has some potential to really develop into a really good guy for us. You're getting Shane Bieber back, and also Tanner Bybee, who's been the worst pitcher out of the rotation this year. I think Logan Allen's even better than him, and I can't believe I'm saying that. Tanner Bybee's going to be the streaky one here, but if you can get him to a point where he could pitch like the Tanner Bybee of old, and you could rattle off some wins against these easy teams, then you're in really good shape from the pitching perspective. From the offensive perspective, obviously we know what Jose can do. David Fry starting to kind of turn into David Fry a little bit again. That's great. If Jonathan Rodriguez can keep up what he did yesterday, that would be fantastic for us. I still don't know, and we haven't seen it consistently that will be the case, but granted, it could be. You have Quan as the leadoff guy. He had a big all-star game, didn't he, with that RBI? So Quan, obviously, got your good safe there with the leadoff spot. Lane Thomas is a guy we're rumored to possibly put on the block if things don't go well. But if Lane Thomas can get going and find his groove and this team gets on the right path, Lane Thomas is a great guy to have at your disposal. The Guardians can figure things out here. But it's going to be hard to compete when you look at the wild card teams. Like the Yankees, to me, offensively, they're a juggernaut. The pitching is the problem there. That's my opinion on the Yankees. It's going to be hard to catch up with them. When you look at Toronto, I mean, obviously them and the Yankees are kind of fighting it out in the AL East right now. But Toronto, to me, I like what they're doing. I like their pitching. I like their lineups. Obviously, they took Miles Straw from us, and they were able to make him above 275 hitter. I mean, Brandon Miles Straw doesn't have the power, but he's still hitting a lot better than he had hit before this season. So the Blue Jays are figuring out a lot of what they're doing with former Guardians talent. So that's great for them. I mean, Jimenez still good defensively. Obviously, offensively, has been a liability. So that looks like a right move right now. But you look at Toronto, they've been pitching very well. I think their pitching staff is a lot better than New York's. I'll say that. The Boston Red Sox, getting back into the conversation, like I said, even though they kind of had a rough patch, I like the Boston Red Sox lineup with Bregman in it. I mean, they're a good team. I would keep an eye on the Red Sox. Tampa Bay, kind of a mess right now, but I think they'll figure it out because they're a good organization. Baltimore, to me, is the bottom of the barrel, but Baltimore still has really good players. It's just been kind of a season that's gone off the rails with a managerial firing and a little bit more of a demotivated fan base and a lot going on there in Baltimore that doesn't look like it's trending in the right direction. So that's the East. You look at the Central, I think Detroit runs it, and the other four are just there. But I think any one of the three between Minnesota, Kansas City, and the Guardians with a good stretch of baseball could get right back into the wild card conversation. The Guardians do have a weak schedule the rest of the year. I'm not a whole believer in strength of schedule, I'll be honest with you, because we saw the Guardians have the hardest schedule last year and still find a way to win the division. So to me, that doesn't really matter. But granted, strength of schedule could be a big thing, especially in baseball. It really doesn't matter. But that could be an advantage thing the Guardians have. I guess we'll find out as the season progresses like we did last year. And also, the White Sox, they're irrelevant. But, you know, they're just not the White Sox of last year. That's good for them. The Astros, the Mariners, they're kind of dueling out west right now. I still think the Astros, just based on the pedigree they have as an organization, are the clear favorites there. Seattle could be a wild card team, though. I'll say this. My buddy Jerome, when he came on the podcast a few months back when we previewed the entire baseball season, he said the Mariners aren't going to have too much offense, but they've shown a lot of offense. They have a lot of games where they've dropped 10, 11 runs, maybe even 14, 15 runs in a game. The Mariners have the ability to light up some offense. Now, it's not necessarily all because of power, but they've shown to have efficient offense at times against good teams too, and bad teams, but they played well against good teams to a degree too. So the Mariners, to me, they get into the wild card round, I would not want to get into a 3-game series with them, especially seeing what they can do offensively from time to time. The pitching rotation there, though, is what's really keeping them in it. The Texas Rangers, to me, since they won the World Series, have been nothing but a disappointment. Bruce Bochy being their manager, they should be a lot better. It's kind of disappointing that last year ended up the way it is. And with guys like Seager in your lineup, I mean, it's honestly disrespectful to the Texas Rangers fan base that they've been this bad. So the Texas Rangers, to me, they really aren't doing too much right now for me. Unless they show some consistency somewhere. Angels have been better than I thought they'd be. I mean, a lot of people projected them to lose 100 games this year. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case, but the Angels aren't very good. And the Athletics are the Athletics. They got a long way to go. So that's the American League. When you look now at the National League and what the National League is doing, especially as things get going here, as the All-Star break is over, I really like what we're seeing from the Phillies. The Mets have had some hard patches, but the Mets should probably stabilize a little bit. The Braves got a big win over the Yankees last night. The Braves have good players on their roster. They just had such a bad start to the year. I think it's going to be hard for them to dig out of that. The Miami Marlins have been a little bit more impressive than I thought they'd be, but they're still not a very good baseball team. They've had 2 good seasons really ever when they won the World Series, and then 2 playoff appearances since. The Marlins are a joke. It's a dang disgrace that organization has been allowed to be as bad as they've been for the last decade, since 2003, really. The last 2 decades. So that's the Marlins. And the Washington Nationals, it looked like they were going to be a team possibly on the rise this year. I still see evidence that they have a lot of rebuilding to do. But granted, they also have a World Series title in recent memory. So to me, I don't think the pressure should be on them as much. But they got a lot of work to do, especially in that AL East, which I believe is loaded with really 3 good teams. One team that just really underperformed poorly to start the year, and the Atlanta Braves. But in the future, the Braves, I think, have a bright spot when everybody gets healthy. And obviously, Acuna Jr. being back should be helping their offense out a little bit better than it has. Matt Olson, still a great guy to have in their lineup. Their rotation just hasn't been as solid as it usually is. But the Atlanta Braves, to me, they have a brighter future than what this year has brought them. I don't think 2025 is their year, but 2026 very well could be. The Central, the Chicago Cubs are a good baseball team. Milwaukee Brewers have been back on the rise, but to me, I really like what I'm seeing from the Cubs. And I just am a little biased because I really like Matthew Boyd and what he's delivered to them and what he did for us here in Cleveland last year. So to me, the Cubs right now are the favorites in the Central. Milwaukee might threaten them a little bit, but I don't think the Brewers are going to be nearly as good as the Cubs. St. Louis is back on the up and up, but there's still a long way to go. Pittsburgh is a criminal organization, as you well know. That they have Paul Skeens, and they're going to continue to waste him until he's a New York Yankee or an LA Dodger. So that's that with that. But O'Neal Cruz could also hit the baseball, and they're wasting him too. And you look at the rest of Pittsburgh's rotation, they have some really good pitchers outside of Skeens, and they're still not a very good baseball team. So it's criminal the way the Pittsburgh Pirates operate, and that's my thought on that. Cincinnati Reds look like they're heading in an upward trajectory, but they still got a long way to go. In the West, obviously, the loaded division out in the National League, it's still criminal. The Diamondbacks have bubbled 500 and have had some really good offensive performances, but they just can't pitch, especially late in innings. They just can't pitch. Josh Naylor now being out there has been a humongous help for Arizona offensively. I think they can compete with anybody, but the Diamondbacks just can't pitch. Obviously, the Rockies can't do anything right. San Diego, you have guys like Gavin Sheets in the lineup, which he's usually batting 6th or 7th. And when you have that in the lineup, you're offensively doing well. But the Padres have hit some slumps in the road. Padres, if they pick it up, I think they can be a really good baseball team and compete with the Dodgers like they did last year. The Dodgers, we know what they are. They're a juggernaut right now. I still think they're the favorite to win the National League. I think they're the favorite to win the World Series, and someone's got to show me otherwise that beats them. That's the only way I would believe the Dodgers don't win the World Series this year, is until they lose a playoff series. San Francisco's good too, but to me, San Francisco, they had a great win, a crazy win a few weeks ago with that inside the park home run. I think that was I'm trying to remember. That was a really good game, but it was forgot who hit that home run. I can't think of his name. If you have it, put the name in the chat. I'd appreciate it. But that was a fantastic game, and the Giants have won some clutch games this year. That one was really special. I remember watching the highlights for it. So obviously the Giants, though, really good, I think, offensively and clutch-wise, but they're not consistent enough to the point of the LA Dodgers. But The NL West is loaded, and I think has three of the best teams in Major League Baseball just all sitting in it. And they're going to kind of eat each other out of the games until they find out who wins it by the end of the year. So, yeah, that's the thoughts there on the National League. To me right now, it still looks like it's going to be a Dodgers, and I'm going to go on a limb and say Detroit Tigers World Series. I really like what the Detroit Tigers are doing, and I think they may end up coming out on top of the American League because of it. So we'll see how it pans out. And the Tigers would be a fun team to see win the World Series, I'll be honest with you, outside of A.J. Hinch, of course. So that's Major League Baseball as the season continues to get going. Make sure to stay tuned on Raw Takes with Andrew Hody with new episodes every Saturday live. Next Saturday, we are going to be live at 8 in the morning again, so make sure to stay tuned for that. 8 a.m. will be the start time next Saturday. Now, before we wrap things up, let's talk about the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. 6-0 lean, gone to shreds. The American League came back and took care of business, won it 7-6. Major League Baseball has the best All-Star game of all four major leagues. Well, the NHL had a really good one too, but I still wasn't a huge fan of the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, I'll be completely honest, just because it was 6-0. It was getting dreadful by that point. Sure, it was a great comeback, and then things got interesting, but to me, it still feels like these games don't really mean too much, and I don't know how seriously these players take them. Is it as bad as the NBA All-Star Game? Probably not. I think the NBA All-Star Game takes the cake of just being terrible. Honestly, maybe even the Pro Bowl. I'll throw the Pro Bowl in. The Pro Bowl is not even tackle football anymore. So that makes it completely worthless compared to the NBA All-Star Game. The NBA All-Star Game, the players clearly don't care. They just waste everyone's time and try to make us watch. The only thing cool about a lot of these events, too, is like the home run derbies or the dunk contests. That's what I personally like about All-Star Weekend above and beyond the actual All-Star games themselves. I love the events that lead up to them. I love the player introductions, things like that. When the actual games start, it doesn't really matter who wins and loses. It's just to me. And that's kind of how I felt about the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. It was fun to watch Paul Skeens throw out some shutout innings. It was fun to watch Stephen Kwan get an RBI. It was fun to watch Pete Alonso, too, for the Mets. But still, to me, the All-Star Game is just blasé. There's not much there. There's not much cachet when it comes to these All-Star games, even with all the cachet players playing in them. And so that's kind of frustrating to me. I wish these guys would take it more seriously than they did. It certainly looked like Paul Skeens and Stephen Kwan did. But granted, that's just my thoughts on the situation. I mean, it is what it is. There's not as much cachet with these All-Star games as there should be with all the cachet players. But if you watched the Major League Baseball game and enjoyed it, the All-Star game, I'm glad you did, because it was a lot better than anything the NBA gives us during All-Star time, and certainly better than the Pro Bowl for the NFL. I mean, personally, I'd say this. I think the NFL should do the Pro Bowl midway through the season, give everybody the bye week, and just do it like that. Give everyone a bye week, have the Pro Bowl, then have all players from all 32 teams, not just teams that make the Super Bowl, go to the Pro Bowl. I think that would make it a little bit more interesting, and obviously make it tackle football again. That it's dumb that it's flag football to begin with. The NBA All-Star Game is terrible as it is. You know, granted, you just got to get the players to take it more seriously. And Major League Baseball has to do that too. But Major League Baseball put on a show. Guys like Paul Skeens and Stephen Kwan did take it seriously. Pete Alonso took it seriously. There was more seriousness, I think, in the All-Star Game than the other leagues. But still, there's just something about it that doesn't feel right. And maybe it's just that it was a 6-0 game. It felt boring. And then the comeback, which was kind of legendary, but still, it just felt weird. It still felt like there was too many home runs. There was too much But Major League Baseball, compared to the other two, did a better job. And hockey, I think, has clearly done the best job. And I think everybody in America can agree with that right now. All right, that's today's edition of Raw Takes Live with Andrew Hody. We will be back next Saturday, 8 a.m. right here on YouTube. Make sure to stay tuned, stay subscribed, locked in. Make sure to comment, subscribe, like our videos. Check out some of our prior content if you want to catch up on some old news. We really appreciate it. Check me out on social media. All social media links are going to be in the description below. Also, make sure to stay tuned for some reels. We're going to be posting some reels from all the editions of Raw Takes as they come out. Couple reels of videos. The way we're going to do it, we'll space them all out as the podcast continues every single Saturday right here on YouTube. Make sure to stay tuned for that. And hey, if you like classic rock music, if you like some oldies, if you like listening to some of the greatest hits from the 60s all the way up until the 90s, check out Oldies Amplified on 88.3 FM The Sting. It's from 11 to 2 at night. It's a late night show 88.3 FM, The Sting here in Cleveland. But you can also check out the show on WBWC.com or WBWC on the TuneIn app, wherever you are in the world. We do nothing but provide you some great oldies, play some great classic rock tracks. We got the synth, we got the pop, we got it all. I'm going to be guest hosting the show before that this upcoming Sunday at 8 o'clock in the evening, Sunday night at the Oldies. We're going to do some tributes to Connie Francis. We're going to also talk about the Steve Miller Band a little bit. Obviously, they're not going on tour, so let's just honor Steve Miller a little bit by playing some of his music. Make sure to check that out. We're going to be playing some music from our WBWC Summer Marathon series. If you're interested in some music from the Beach Boys, we're going to be playing that all throughout the show. Make sure to stay tuned for that on 88.3 FM, The Sting, WBWC.com, and WBWC on the TuneIn app. It's Oldies Amplified with Andrew Hody. Follow the show on social media at Facebook and Instagram at Oldies Amplified, or you can even check out some of our former playlists online as well. We post all the playlists to Spotify 12 hours after the show, so check those out. We have them up on social media as well, but our Spotify account is also at Oldies Amplified. So that's it for today's edition of Raw Takes Live. We will be back next Saturday, 8 a.m. right here on YouTube. Stay tuned, stay subscribed, comment, like, check out our social media pages, and make sure to check out Oldies Amplified. Hope you all had a great time watching this. Look forward to being with you all next week again. Stay tuned for some more live reaction. Have a good one, everybody.